So we are here to inform the president and inform America that there are indeed most horrendous domestic U.S. torture programs currently running and being run by this whole mechanism of the intelligence agencies, the NSA, the CIA, the DHS, the DIA, DARPA, in collusion with the military. We've got the military working full-time on this, and they're covering it under classified labels. They are running under cover of surveillance. These are covert U.S. military intel mutilation programs using EMF weapons, neuroweapons. These are programs that are aimed at so-called pacification of the homeland, of the so-called homeland, quote unquote. Remember, we must remember where that word homeland came from. It came directly from Germany. It came from the Nazis. So this is what we said, and basically we started off just saying that these programs are running in the country, electronic warfare, COINTELPRO-based domestic terrorism programs. They're being run by the U.S. intel agencies, U.S. military, U.S. Homeland Security, and they are not normal intelligence or surveillance activities. You see, we are living in this vacuum of media coverage of the subject, thanks to the fact that mainstream media is completely taken over. And this is why all that we see covered in the media is phone tapping, wiretapping. This is, and maybe a little bit about facial biometric surveillance. But in actuality, the biometric surveillance today is now neurosurveillance. It's physical organ surveillance and more. And radiation weaponry are being used on citizens and on civilians. So, and they're being used through police departments. They're being used through fusion centers. They're being used through the DHS. And yet they're not spoken about because our media is not going to speak about it being part of this entire protocol or mechanism. So, in any case, this is what we pondered actually reading out this memo, but we decided against it. Perhaps it would be easier for us to actually just talk about it. One of the two things we said up front is, these are not normative activities, and the people who are being hit, and this is very important to underline, the people who are being hit with these weapons are people who are standing out in their communities for some reason or another, and people whose paths have crossed with people who are doing very corrupt things, people in power, people in official positions who are engaging in corruption. So we are talking about whistleblowers in communities. We're talking about human rights activists. We're talking about animal rights activists, eco-justice activists. We're talking about outspoken, civic-minded, community-minded people in the community who are being targeted. And this targeting program actually is not restricted to the U.S. alone. This exact same protocol, this exact same format is being used worldwide in what I guess we've now come to understand is some kind of global Phoenix program that's being run on all UN countries.
Really, even because it is a global Phoenix program, and I think Mark M. Rich wrote about this in his book, and then, Professor Ed Karlstrom was talking about that, and you were talking about it, Ramola. And I think it's also important to remember that what the global Phoenix program goes back to is a follow-on from the death camp program in the Second World War. Because even though it was originally, in Germany, it also happened in Poland and in other countries. So that was, not a global death camp program. It was I think a European death camp program, although maybe historians tell us that there were already death camps also during the Second World War elsewhere. But, that's where all this goes back to, the death camp program of Germany, which then the CIA used for their Phoenix program abroad. So this is how to think about it. These are extermination camps, and these people figured out that making actual extermination camps and dragging people there in an information society is easy to spot, and people will rise up against it. So the idea of the cartel was to now try to just have individual death camps and silently kill off people within their own four walls and their own environment, and, you know, kill us off such that when we're driving our car, we just keep being shot into the head until we cause an accident or die of a brain tumor. And that is the modern death camp. You know, it's an individual death camp, and it's absolutely horrific. And you know what, also, now that we bring up the memo to Trump, people who haven't listened to us talk about yet should also know that after Ramola wrote it and she submitted the memorandum to Donald Trump, she was assaulted so badly that she was bedridden for a week. You know, she nearly died. I mean, it was a special achievement, and the fact that you got that to President Trump, Ramola, already, you know, makes you in line for a medal, for the highest merit medal that, you know, we have in the world, because you were the person who directly informed the president about death camps going on in America. You know, that has to go down in the history books.
Well, let's hope he got the message, you know. Let's hope that people in his cabinet have gotten the message. And I'm here actually to tell people that we have to keep sending that memo out. We have to keep sending that information out. You know, you don't need to use that memo, but the information in there is what we need to keep getting out to the world. And it's literally, we have each other, you know, we have each other, and we have other activists who are working with us in the space who are not here with us right this minute, but, you know, who we know are there and whose work, you know, we have drawn on and whom we represent and so forth. But this is all, we are literally we're in the front lines currently. We are the people who are here to tell everybody that these electromagnetic weapons are most undoubtedly and indubitably being used on us. These neural weapons are being used not just on us, they're being used on whole populations to different degrees and in different forms. You know, so when you were saying, Catherine, that you were being shot at driving on those, you know, hairpin bends in Switzerland, so that in a sense kind of impelling you to have an accident of your own volition, lose control of your own car. They're also doing it mentally and neurologically by hitting people's brains with things like synthetic telepathy, which is a military weapon today. It is a military neural weapon. Lockheed Martin has a department called Intelligence Systems. And what do you think those are? They're neural systems. They are actually employing neuroscientists to develop brain weapons. And who are they testing these brain weapons on? Non-consensually. On us. On writers, activists, whistleblowers, journalists, human rights advocates around the world, you know? So look at what is going on. They're doing this, and then they're sort of intimidating everybody into absolute silence. So yes, us taking that step to send that memorandum out, I think, was a pretty important step in the history of this, of all this. And you know, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go back to it because there's a list of the kind of weapons that are being used. I just want to show that.
And I can add very quickly that I had a detective do a little bit of work for me, and he turned up the fact that Lockheed Martin has essentially organized stalking harassment networks in 47 states.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Sorry, everybody. Those people who've maybe fallen asleep, this is like bombshell disclosure again.
Yes.
You heard it on the Techno Crime Fighters Forum first.
Absolutely.
Karen,
can you repeat that very clearly for everybody to hear?
I had a detective do some limited work for me because of my money situation, and he turned up the fact that Lockheed Martin has a department where they have developed stalking harassment networks in 47 of the 50 states. And the head of that department is William Patrick Cox. Now, in some states, there are home businesses that are undefined. They're called William Patrick Cox Home Business Franchise. I wonder what they do.
That is bombshell.
That is huge.
bombshell. And you know
I
what?
think that warrants a news article all by itself. I think
Yeah,
I
I like it when Karen just shakes these out of her sleeves and the by. Let me just interject it here whilst Ramola is searching for those bullet points. Like, what, Karen? This is like, it's like, wow. Like, we didn't know either. You know, this is the joint investigation team where all the investigators go off and just, produce these bombshell disclosures for you, you know? Wow. I mean, God, that just blows my socks off. And it's like, this is like WikiLeaks level disclosure here, but also really important because people look at this video and have a look again what she said, because it's in 47 states of the 50 states. Could it be that Washington, D.C. is the one state where they don't do this? You know, I don't know. I'm wondering what those three are, where they don't do it. But anyway, so this means that every single person in the US, most likely, can now start investigating by themselves, you know, who owns these companies, because they must be registered in the state company register, and can start digging dirt up on them, because I tell you, lot, this is the Nazi network.